In the world of retailing, there is no other company that comes close to rivaling Amazon. It accounts for half of all the online retail transactions. And even though it's the third most valuable company in the world, cities interested in hosting its second headquarters recently offered Amazon billions of dollars in tax breaks in hopes of luring it to their locations.
Not everyone loves Amazon, though. One of the company's critics is Stacy Mitchell, a writer and advocate who lives in Portland and works for the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. She is not won over by the tens of millions of customers who like Amazon and its convenience and consider it a company that's doing what firms ought to do in a free market.
I think what we need to be concerned about is that Amazon is increasingly got this stranglehold on the economy. It's picking winners and losers. You know, because more than half of all online product searches now start at Amazon, many other companies that want to reach us with their products now have to go through Amazon. And that gives Amazon an enormous amount of power.
That's a key point. People don't nowadays search by going on Google and looking for maroon sweaters. They go to Amazon and search for maroon sweaters, right?
That's absolutely right. And we know that Amazon uses that position as a gatekeeper to undermine competition, that it monitors what other sellers are doing on its platform, it takes that information to expand its own services, it retaliates against companies that it doesn't like. And all of this sort of stranglehold is problematic for us as consumers over time because it means there are fewer companies that are able to compete and innovate and reach us, but it also has real effects on the economy.
What are some of those effects on the economy?
We're seeing a real collapse in small businesses. We're seeing a collapse in new business formation. You know, we're now, as a country, creating new businesses at only 1/3 the rate that we were in the 1980s. And a lot of economists have looked at this and said it's because we have so much concentration. It's very hard to start and grow a business now when you have these dominant firms like Amazon that are so entrenched that it's very hard to challenge them. I think when we look back at the tools that we've used in the past, to control concentration, what we see is that those are really key to opening up opportunity, to really diversifying the economy.
You argue that Amazon is a monopoly, and you acknowledge that there have been monopolies in America many times before in the past, but that this is different. How so?
It's because Amazon isn't looking just to dominate particular markets. This isn't a company that's just a retailer or just a cloud services provider. Amazon really is looking to control the underlying infrastructure of the economy. It really wants to replace markets with its own platform, so that it is the gatekeeper now, much as railroads used to be in the 19th century. You know, a handful of industrialists gained control of the railroads, and they used that power to disadvantage their rivals in the other industries that they were involved in. And that's what led to our first antitrust laws. And now we have Amazon doing something very similar online. It has become this powerful gatekeeper. And that's really what the concern is it's not competing. It has that control that other companies now rely on.
You know very well the story of the rise and fall of companies and industries in capitalism. It's called creative destruction, and it is painful at times, but it is what drives the economy forward. Only 20 years ago or so, General Electric was the most valuable country in America. It is now a country with deep, deep problems that has lost something like 95% of its value from where it was 20 years ago. Isn't, just because of the nature of the way markets work, isn't Amazon vulnerable? Isn't there somebody already out there now who is going to be gunning for Amazon and posing real competition to it in 10, 15 years?
Yeah, I think there are two problems with that. You know, one is that we've seen a complete loss of venture capital for firms that want to challenge companies like Amazon and Google. That's just dropped off the map. If you're going to compete with those companies, you cannot get funding. That's a real problem because investors recognize that these are really entrenched monopolies that have a lot of power to predict who's going to come along and knock them out before they can even compete. The other thing that I would say is that when we step back and look more broadly at the economy, we've seen concentration across all of these industries. You know, the tech platforms are especially powerful, but in every industry, airlines, agriculture, banking, we now have just a handful of firms that have this tight grip and huge market shares. So this is not a dynamic economy. You know, I mean, what you're sort of describing is the idea that new firms are coming along, there's lots of competition and churn and change that brings innovation, creates new jobs, jobs, helps consumers. That would be great if that's what we were seeing. But instead, we're seeing fewer and fewer players that control more and more. And that process has a lot to do with rising inequality. It has a lot to do with why workers are not getting good wages. It has a lot to do with why our main streets are really suffering.
So a lot of people wonder, well, what can I do if I'm not happy with that situation? Stacey Mitchell says that individual consumers really can't do anything. She says government regulation, more likely the breakup of large companies like Amazon, is going to be the solution. That's the way she sees it. As we mentioned, Stacey Mitchell works for the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. Its mission, in part, is to challenge concentrated economic and political power.